Who created God? But can God be created? Can a created entity ever be God? If you are asking who created God, your argument is a gross misrepresentation of the Christian understanding of God. In this video, I am going to explain why this is a bad argument. Let me highlight 5 problems with this question. The first 2 are fallacies, while the remaining are logical consequences of this question. The first problem with this question, who created God, is that this is a straw man. Skeptics are attacking a weak argument that Christians actually do not hold. They think we say everything needs a creator, but that's not true. The actual law of causality and Christian theology states everything that begins to exist has a cause. God never began to exist, so he does not need a cause. The second problem with the question who created God is also a fallacy, which is called category error. I will explain this with an example. Asking if God created everything, then who created God is like asking if Da Vinci painted the Last Supper, then who painted Da Vinci? Or imagine asking if John baked the cake, then who baked John? This is an absurd question. You can clearly see these are different categories. Da Vinci is not in the same category as a painting to be painted. John is not in the same category as a cake to be baked. In the same way, God is not in the category of a creation to be created. God is the uncaused cause and unmoved mover. When you ask who created God, then you are not talking about God. Now let's move on to the third problem with asking who created God. That is infinite regress. That's not a fallacy, but it's a logical dead end that your faulty reasoning leads you to. Your argument does not leave any room for a beginning. You keep asking what caused the cause or who created the creator again and again, and the only result is infinite regress, which practically does not exist. I will explain this with an example. You see this beautiful mobile in my hand. You may ask, who gave it to me? I would say, John. Then who gave it to John? Matthew. Then who gave it to Matthew? Mark. Who gave it to Mark? Luke. But you cannot ask this question forever. You cannot have an infinite regress of giving and taking, right? At some point, someone has to manufacture this mobile. Unless that beginning point exists, this mobile phone cannot exist. And you won't be able to see it in my hand. Where has it gone? That has gone with the infinite regress. An infinite regress simply cannot exist. So, this question, who created the creator, it is a self-refuting argument. Now let us move on to the fourth problem. When you ask who created God, you are assuming that God is within time. But God is not within time, He is beyond space and time. He is the one who created space and time. This question implies that there was a time before God when He was created, but there is no such time because He is eternal. That's why I said in the beginning of the video, God cannot be created. You cannot create something or someone which is not in space and time. When you talk about something created within time, you are not talking about God, or at least you are not talking about the God that we are talking about. You are talking about your own strawman version of the God. You keep accusing us of moving the goalpost. But the problem is not that we actually move the goalpost. The problem is you don't even know where the goalpost is. You don't even understand what the goal is in the first place. You don't have the willingness to do the slightest intellectual work to understand what the Christians actually believe before trying to refute it. You are too lazy to do that. You keep refuting a strawman version of God which is within time and space. A created strawman version of God which exists only in your imagination. And that God is totally incompatible with the Christian God. The God of the Bible is outside time and space. He is the unmoved mover and uncaused cause. And when we point this out to you, you complain about moving the goalpost without even knowing where the goalpost is. Now, when you ask who created the creator, there is another problem here. That's our fifth point. You are leaving the notion of the uncreated empty. Now, let me explain to you the notion of the uncreated. I believe we all agree on this point. Even atheists have to agree that there is something or someone which is uncreated or uncaused. To be more precise, a non contingent necessary being. Why? Because you cannot have nothing produce something. When there was absolutely nothing, there would be nothing even today. So, logic dictates that something must have existed forever. Now, let's follow the logic step by step. 1. That uncreated entity cannot have a beginning and must be eternal. Second, therefore, it must be beyond time and space. It must be immaterial and transcendent. Since this entity created matter, it cannot be made of matter. Since this entity created space and time, this entity should be beyond space and time. Now, the third point, it must be personal and conscious. Now, this is the most important part. Logic proves that this uncreated entity must be a person and it must be conscious. How do we know that? Think about it. If the first cause were just an impersonal force like gravity or energy, it could not decide to create a universe. An impersonal force can just exist. If the cause is eternal, then the effect also should be eternal. But we know the universe is not eternal. The universe has a specific beginning. The only way to get a universe with a beginning from a cause that is eternal is if that cause is conscious and has a will. That cause must have the ability to choose to create. To make a choice, you need a mind. To have a mind, you must be a person. So, the uncreated is not just a force or energy, it is a person of consciousness that we call God, and hence God cannot be created.